Alright, now this obsession with race and IQ being the determining factor of whether a race is really the best or the worst race or not, it's getting pretty old. It's as if no matter how many times someone debunks this, they're just going to cling to this mindset no matter how many times you disprove it. Although I'm not going to parrot TFM on this, but he's already disproven the whole thing using the Native American Indians with their IQs and their terrible outcomes due to welfare. And we've had Milton Friedman as well as Thomas Sowell speaking out against the welfare state and what it does to people's communities since the 70s. But we still have the white nationalist types that will go, well, you should look at the average IQ of people that do drugs. It's mostly low IQ folks like darkies. And if you look at the prison stats, it's mostly niggas in prison anyway. And them darkies, they have an average IQ of 85 or 87 or something. And they're the majority of those in the prison. And you all got more niggas than white folks in the prison. So there you go. Well, IQ got to count for something. Brr, brr, brr. Although I will give them this much. Someone with a lower IQ is less likely to figure out why and how crime doesn't pay. Like my ex-girlfriend, for example. But it's still a negative correlation nonetheless. But I promise you I'm not going to go through this entire video repeating what you guys already know, because it's already been beaten to death, from most angles that is. So instead of using the example of the Native American Indians that have higher IQs than black people, I'm going to use an ethnicity that actually has a lower IQ than black people. And these are East Indians, as in people from the country of India. Alright, so let's start with the basics here. So the average Indian IQ is 82. That's right, 82. That's only 3 points lower than the average African American IQ. So yeah, the IQ disparity is pretty small, but it's not going to make an iota of difference, which I'm about to show you. But really quick, let's just recap the whole Native American thing, just so we're on the same page. Okay? Native Americans, higher IQs than black people. Welfare dependent, high divorce rates, high suicide rates, high poverty rates, high crime rates, high drug and alcohol abuse rates. And yet we have India, which has a lower crime rate and drug abuse rate, even suicide rate, than all of the US races combined. And their population is 3 times bigger than ours. So is that mind-blowing or what? And yeah, I know we love to call them Cuckistan, but let's be frank here, there's a lot of things that they actually do right, compared to the United States and compared to white people in general. So let's start with one of my favorites here. Incoming charts! Alright, taking this one from a previous video. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, out of wedlock birth rate, 17%. Non-Hispanic whites, 29%. Hispanics, 53%. American Indian and Native Alaskans, 66%. And non-Hispanic blacks, 73%, which is roughly 40% altogether. And now India's out-of-wedlock birth rate, less than 1%. All that feminism, and yet still less than 1%. But why is the single mother rate so low in India and among Indian people? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Because in the United States, and particularly in the black community, it's encouraged. You're a strong, independent woman, you don't need no man. The government is your daddy, is your husband, and so on. Well, in India, and among Indian people, you don't have that. In fact, if a woman from India has a bastard child, not only will the family disown her, but they will disown the child too, and they are both screwed. Now, ultimately, I do feel sorry for the kid because, let's face it, the child never has to be born. Plus, we already know what happens to children born of out-of-wedlock parents. They're more likely to be a statistic. But this is pretty much how you do it. This is how you stop single motherhood from happening. This is why I always say slut-shame your women for their own good. But is there something else that actually prevents them from having out-of-wedlock births? Well, duh, welfare spending. Time for some more charts. Alright, so let's start with a chart that pretty much all of us have already seen, the United States fiscal year 2015. And what was the majority of the spending going to? Welfare. And not the military. And now let's compare that with India. How much do they spend on their welfare state? Oh my gosh! 2%! They actually spend more money on finance and debt management. So without the support of a man, the welfare state, or family, then yeah, she's far less likely to have a child out of wedlock. Yeah, women from India know what side their bread is buttered on. So, at least in that regard, isn't it ironic how those low IQ Indians are more fiscally responsible than us high IQ Americans? But yeah, tell me again how it's all about race, it's all about IQ, white man is superior, America's number one, brr, brr, brr. And no, I'm not dissing the USA in favor of India. I'm just stating the facts. But speaking of facts, here's some more. Alright, so let's look at the total crimes as well as total crimes per 1,000 in India. The US ranks 7 times more and 25 times more respectively. And remember, India has roughly 3 times as many people as the United States does. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics and the details about each type of crime that was listed in the statistics, because for starters, there's quite a few of them there. I'm just going to link it in the description. If you want to check it out for yourself, go ahead. And even on that note, if you look at the types of crimes, crime rates are still actually lower in most regards. Very few exceptions. Now, I know this all varies from one area to the next, you don't have to tell me that, but as a whole, combined, you're technically safer in India, and a much lower prison population too. So, even though India has the most broken education system in the world, and lower IQs on average, they're still doing better than black people. Why? Because they have intact families, and because they have far less welfare dependence. And this also proves that just because a race has a lower IQ does not automatically mean that they are more susceptible to being criminals and drug abusers. Once again, look at the stats. You'll see that they are far less likely to abuse drugs. And for the record, yes, I am a race realist, because I understand that there's differences in IQ and all sorts of other things in regards to races. But, as I just demonstrated, there is no correlation between IQ and being a criminal or a drug abuser. It's always welfare, dependence, and single motherhood. If the case was always IQ, then why were black people actually doing better before the civil rights movement than they are doing now? If you don't believe me, just click in the description. I've done videos on both of these if you haven't seen them. And with that being said, hopefully this video will put another nail in the coffin of the whole IQ thing. Now, don't get me wrong, IQ is important, and it plays a major role in how someone's life is going to turn out in many cases. But this is not necessarily one of them. At least not for the reasons that you might think. Alright, so Shogun is done. I'll see you next time.